I know a lot about witchcraft, and because I've got a lot of friends that are Wiccans or in covens and do things, and it's always amazed me. And I've never met such more loving, down to earth, and in tune people that know what is going on, you know?
Yeah, because they're connected, and nothing is not connected to anything else. So if you're able to read it and understand it, you can get the information from it. So nothing is not connected to anything else. And it's amazing, really, when I've found that everything is connected by esoteric theme. Most things are connected mathematically. You know, you can go from Egypt to Stonehenge to the face on Mars to the Sidonian city, and all of them are telling you the precise location of themselves and each of the other monuments and how to find them.
Yeah.
Now, there's Egyptian obelisks on the moon, and when you take the coordinates of them and put it on the Earth, it's Egypt. So you can say that there's some kind of civilization that has moved from Mars to Egypt to the moon to all of, and there's even obelisks on other moons of other planets. So it's quite clear that there is a network, a solar network going on here, a solar system network that goes beyond Earth. And it is really, really interesting. But the true depth of the secret societies, which again, you know, Egyptian knowledge coming through the Kabbalah, coming through the mystic Jews, into Masonry, into all of these offshoots of what was really a sacred text, a sacred knowledge. And each of the different cultures have used it in their own way. Now, when you look at the Greeks, a lot of the Greek philosophers were mystery school initiates in Egypt.
Yes, they were, and philosophers and yeah, Socrates and all that. I often wonder whether the Anunnaki influence has influenced all of it, every foundation within everything.
You see, I have a different take. Yeah, I have a different take on the Anunnaki. I know that ETs exist. I've bumped into them. I've seen them face to face. I've seen so many craft in the skies that I know that there's a presence here. They exist here. But the Anunnaki timing and the Anunnaki story is incorrect, because I mean, I'm only going by the Zachariah Sitchin interpretation, because that seems to be the most famous one in UFO communities and different things. So that is the one that I looked into. I acknowledge that there may be other interpretations that I have not looked into, but when you look at Sitchin's interpretation, the datings are incorrect, and you can prove that by science, you can prove that by other means, but the datings are incorrect. Now, when you look at the individual pieces of the Anunnaki story, the main ones, when you've got Anu, Enki, Enlil, when you've got Alalu, when you've got Nibiru, you can connect this to genetics and to Egypt. So when you see the giant boat, Khufu's boat, the solar boat inside Khufu's pyramid, that is Nibiru, because the word Nibiru means ferryman. Now, when you look at the river Styx and Charon in Greek mythology, it was Charon who took the souls across the river Styx in the boat. Now, the Egyptian version of that is the solar boat of Khufu, where the enlightened souls are carried to the river of the sky, which is the duet. So Nibiru means ferryman. So the boat is the Nibiru, is the ferryman of the souls to the river of the sky, the underworld in Egypt. Now, Anu means divine personification of sky. So when you look at the likes of Anubis, you have Sirius A and you have Sirius B. One of them is seen, one of them is unseen. Now, so that represents duality. It represents light and dark. The seen,
they're a binary star, aren't they?
They are binary star. So when you get Anubis, which is really an ecliptic, it is an ecliptic separation of duality. So now when you look at Anu, in some languages, Anu means atom. Now, when you look at the negative and positive serpent, which is Enki and Enlil, they were known as the Snake Brothers, the Shetty, which to me is the double helix of DNA, because you have a negative twist and a positive twist in each twist of our double helix of DNA. Now, when you look at the daughters of men were copulated by the gods, then you are talking in masonry about the triple helix. It's the DNA upgrade. So the biblical story of the son of men mating with the daughters on Earth is really a DNA upgrade. Yes. From the double helix to the triple helix. When you look at the likes of Alalu, who is supportedly to be the supervisor of the gold mining expedition, Alalu means wave genetics. So it is talking about genetic potential.
Yes.
The Anunnaki story is telling us about our own genetic transmutation. Now, we suddenly appeared around about 200,000 years ago, and our current state has no evolution to Neanderthal man. So we just appeared, and whereas apes have 48 chromosomes, we have 46. That is because 2 of them were fused together to make the chromosome 2. That is why humans have 46, they have 48. Now, when you look at a gene called the fork-head box protein P2, that appeared 200,000 years ago, and that is what makes us different. That just appeared. So if the Zachariah Sitchin story of the Anunnaki 450,000 years ago, it is an incorrect time frame. When he says in his story that the Anunnaki brought the moon into his current orbit 450,000 years ago, that is an incorrect timeline, because the moon was there 2.2 billion years ago. Now, when you look at the oxygen isotopes of the moon and Earth, they tell you that the moon and Earth were created around about the same time, the same distance away from the sun. So the Anunnaki did not bring the moon. The Anunnaki also say in the Sitchin version that when they got to Earth, there was already life on planet Earth.
I'd never heard of that before, the Anunnaki saying that they'd bought the moon.
According to Sitchin, it was bought. It was bought by the Shetty, the Snake Brothers.
I heard a different version of Tiamat crashing into the moon and crashing into the Earth and creating Kingu that is now known as our moon. And wow, so that's a different take on it for me.
But scientifically, that couldn't have happened. But when you 2.2 billion years ago, the moon was in its current position. So without the moon, there is no life or no higher life on Earth, because the moon keeps us in a 23.5 degree tilt. And it is that tilt that gives us the seasons. It is that tilt that gives us the oceans as a liquid. It is that tilt that gives us an inhabitable temperature on Earth. So without that tilt, without the moon, there is no higher life forms on Earth. So if the Anunnaki, as Sitchin in his version says, the Anunnaki brought the moon here and yet they found life when they got here, that is not correct. So there's obviously something wrong in that translation.
I don't listen to Sitchin stuff. I don't read much of his stuff. I look into Samuel Kramer's work and people like that. Today I've been reading some Yale miscellaneous tablets, actually, Sumerian translated tablets by Yale that are absolutely fascinating, that talk of the moon and the moon gods and the celestial gods. I'd check it out. The Philadelphia Library, they've got a fantastic Sumerian collection of tablets that are translated by different scholars. And this one that I was reading today was phenomenal, and I've got some works coming from that. But yeah, poor old Zachariah Sitchin, I think he's got a lot. He's great in how he was the grandfather of putting all this there, because it was sleeping and it's awakened everybody back up again. It caused a stir. I'm glad he did that. And but a lot of people have spun off his coattails of many of his things being absolutely bona fide, and they're not. You have to go in and really check out this stuff. for yourself and go on a really, really deep trail. This is a good book, Inanna, by Samuel Kremer and Diane Walkstein, which is a really good one on the Queen of Heaven. And there's a lot of esoteric wisdom with the Anunnaki mentioned in here. She created the marriage rites, for one. And there's a lot of rites and initiations that go on in Freemasonry. And it's a little bit like a marriage, isn't it? They have to kind of, they have to offer themselves fully to the service, don't they, of Freemasonry. And to leave, they have to pay their dues to leave. So they can't just leave, can they? It's like a marriage. It's like a marriage, right, that they take.
It is. I mean, originally marriage is the union of opposites. Now, when you look at the modern phrase tying the knot, that comes from Egypt, which is the amalgamation of opposites, tying the knot. Yeah. So a lot of things that we do relates back to Egypt. When we go into a church, we're walking through the chakras. When we leave the church, we symbolize a rebirth because we're walking out of the yoni-shaped arch. So we are symbolizing rebirth as we leave. Now, when we look at the font that the children are baptized on, it's normally has 8 sides, which is the font of Venus, which is the Queen of Heaven, which is Lucifer. So Mother Mary and Inanna are Lucifer, and you baptize your child. It's Venus initiations, really. Now, when you look at the altar means to sacrifice. Now, when people walk around in church and say, peace be with you, peace comes from hetep, which means to sacrifice. So we have, a sacrificial thing. Now, when you go back to moon gods and moon goddesses, the ancients realized at the time of cave times that the moon related to fertility. The moon related to the menstrual cycles. It related to the fertility. So they started to associate that with goddesses, the goddesses of fertility. Now, when you see the tumuluses, which are the ancient burial mounds around the world, and you've got Silbury Hill, which matches the altar of witness on Sidonian City exactly. And even the map overlay of Sidonia, if you put it over Avebury, it's an exact match. But when you start looking at these burial mounds, they are the genital pit. They are really, the grave is the womb of rebirth. And we see that, the ancient pits and the burial mounds and the graveyards, which relate to the fertility. I say this is the genital pit, it's the womb, it's the rebirth. So we have all of these goddesses that were associated with the moon and fertility and feminine cycles. And that is how we start to get these mythological sort of gods and goddesses. When you look at gods and goddesses, it is really a dualistic symbology. And there's only really one true creator of everything, and everything below that, we can look at Britney Spears, and some people see Britney Spears as a god. In Papua New Guinea, in the Second World War, the Australian Air Force landed in the forests, and because they'd never seen man in the sky before, they associated the Australian army with being gods, because there were tribes people in the forest that had never seen things coming from the air. So we can associate anything with being a god, and we do that. We do that now. So humanity in those terms have not really progressed. Now, when you progress, you start to realize that the gods and goddesses don't matter. They're quite irrelevant, because what is most relevant is you and your journey. So all of these gods and goddesses who are fighting for our attention and fighting for our allegiance and getting us to fight between ourselves for them, we are fighting over lies, because they don't matter. They are irrelevant. What relevance is Enki to me? None, because I'm on my journey and I am happy with what I'm doing. So Enki and Enlil have no relevance to me. They only have relevance is when you haven't realized yourself. And when you do realize yourself, you start to then get into the true meanings of the initiations, because initiation is the soul. It is the soul that gets initiated. An initiation is a spiritual awakening. When you have an initiation and a spiritual awakening of the soul, gods and goddesses are irrelevant. So what I would say to people is forget them. You don't need them. What relevance? Why do I need an ascended master? If I go to New Age and everyone talks about the ascended masters are guiding you and the ascended masters have done it and come back. Well, so what? Good for them. But that has no relevance to me because I don't need that relevance. So when you start getting into these higher levels of self and this conquering of self and this realization of self, a lot of what we do as humans and rituals and practices and belief systems on Earth have no relevance at that level. They really don't. Now, you have secret societies. When you spoke about astral entities, you have secret societies that are involved in group consciousness rituals where they're able to create and manifest astral entities. Now, these astral entities, they liaise with them and interact with them, but it is their creation. It is a creation of their group mind because the power of the mind is extremely potent. Now, when you look at lots of orbs that are around spiritual groups that are vacuum domains, the creation of the mind, when you look at the phenomenon of stigmata, when people say, look, I've got the wounds of Christ, that is the psychokinesis of the mind that is putting impressions on your skin. There is a doctor, that is a surgeon in the Philippines that has been witnessed by scientists to make incisions with his mind. No knives, nothing else, makes incisions with his mind. The power of the mind is more than we can ever imagine. So when we have these group sessions and we start focusing on things with such intent, we create them. These are the gods that people are worshipping. So when you get to this higher level of initiation, believe me, they become irrelevant.
Absolutely fascinating listening to your take on things. So where do you think we are heading with all this that's coming out from the Pentagon? What do you think they're going to release to us? Do you think they're going to tell us something that we don't already know? Will there be some more knowledge to the jigsaw puzzle put in there?
So what I've always said, and sort of anticipating this for a decade ago, really, disclosure. Everybody's calling for disclosure. UFO communities are calling for disclosure. Ask yourself the question, do you believe that ETs exist? Do you believe that they come here sometimes in ships? Yes. So why do I need Joe Biden to tell me that? When the government get involved in something, it is usually in their interest. If they are going to disclose something to humanity, there is a motive behind that disclosure. I don't need the government to tell me what I know exists. So why is everybody blindly shouting for disclosure? Because it's quite obvious these things exist. The people who are calling for disclosure are the ones who believe that it exists because they are within the communities that have that belief. So why do we need an official stamp from a government to tell us what we know is true? We don't. It's just that people seem to think that if the government tell me, then it must be true. Well, no, if the government tell you, then it's actually the opposite. So look at what the government tell you with some kind of cynicism. Look into it for yourself and don't believe everything that they're saying, because there's always, when government and officialdom is involved, there's always something behind it. There's always something pushing it, which is something in their interest to do.
Absolutely. Agenda. And just quickly before we finish it up, what do you think about this business of Stonehenge and then building a bypass underneath it? Because I'm seeing a lot in the communities and in the media this week, especially being solstice week. I travelled up there and did the 3 Stonehenge, Avebury and Glastonbury tour. It was amazing to do that visit, but it was quite shocking that it was still closed off. And seeing as though Royal Ascot went ahead, going ahead. Bit strange and bizarre that all these public things are going ahead, and such importance as the solstice was cancelled. Now, come on, Michael. They cannot cancel the celestial event of the heavens, can they? So it still took place in fields nearby, and I think there was a couple of revelers that did act a little bit naughty and sneak in there, but the majority of the people that I met kept their social distance, were mindful, were still mindful, were empathic of others and compassionate, and used, everybody was in their own little bubbles. But I didn't see one mask, which was really good not to see.
You see, you only have to social distance if you're not Matt Hancock, the health secretary. Everybody else has to do that apart from him. But the rulers of this world understand the true power and the true purpose of ancient monuments. They understand that the 64 keys of Enoch, which is why I mentioned the book, is the grid system that the pyramids of Egypt are built upon. They are portal opening keys. So the 64 keys of Enoch is the 8x8 grid, 8 times 8 is 64. It is the grid upon which the pyramids of Egypt, it's basically a key to open portals. Now, when you look at the likes of Stonehenge, which is the exact same, when you look at all of these ancient monuments, they open portals, they are using energy. People who are there, now I've been there when friends of mine have made the stones sing back and reverberate back. In 1971, 5 men disappeared from the centre of Stonehenge, never to be seen again, and this was witnessed, their disappearance. These are portal creating machines, but they're crystalline, natural portal making machines. Beam Me Up Scotty is not science fiction, it is real. So they understand that certain things are written in the stars. Again, the celestial narrative. So now they can't change the celestial narrative because it is the power of nature, but they can try and disrupt the energies that are being utilized. Now, the reason they are going to put roads and dual carriageways beneath Stonehenge is because they know it disrupts the energy. They know it disrupts everything that it stands for and everything that it can be used for, because at some point it is written that all of these ancient monuments are to be reactivated. Now, when they are reactivated and they join together, game up. So what do? They know this is coming. They know they can't stop it, but they can interfere with it. And they can try and that's what they're doing.
They're trying to interfere and trying to put a stop to things. And I won't tell you what obscenities I did shout at them in the car as I went past. I couldn't help it. And on the end of it was freedom for the people. Because I think that's what is needed here, that the power of the people will take over now in all situations, whether it be esoteric knowledge that's been hidden from us, whether it be from advanced cultures, celestial beings that are out there in the cosmos. I think humanity is now at that level of disclosure where, like you said, Michael, if everything aligns, it's going to go kaboom. And there's really nowhere to go with it now, is there? Because the lid's off. Secret knowledge. I mean, we're getting to know about the Freemasons. We're getting to know about mystery schools. The ancient mystery schools have reawakened. The Mesopotamian, Akkadian knowledge, that has reawakened. So everything is now at this tipping point. Dare I say a tipping point?
It was timed for now. Now, when you look at the Great Pyramid being Noah's Ark, which it is really the arcane knowledge that was timed to travel the waters of time guided by the stars. Now, when you look at sacred knowledge that the Hebrews took from Egypt, and they created the Hebrew calendar through star codes, through star charts, which they hid in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which the Knights Templars have hidden in Rosslyn Chapel. Now, when you look at that, you will see that they operate in 360-year cycles. Now, all this was timed to happen on the 17th 360-degree cycle. That is now.
Now, perfect timing. Now. That's what I was about to say. That is, it's all now. It's all the Mayan calendar, everything. It's like everything has just sped up and it's here now. And we're at this point. It's the tipping point. I'm going to call it the tipping point, this one.
And it is. And it was timed to be re-emerged at a most suitable time when it would have, when it stands the most chance of being effective, and that is now. So the pyramid knowledge, the ancient knowledge of the pyramids and other monuments, was timed to be re-emerged now during our 17th 360-year cycle.
Well, I work with another girl, Tracy Ash, who I interview quite often, and she works out there in Egypt. And she speaks of the very same things, of the gateways and the portals, and that these places are literally reawakening. They are aligning and reaching out there to, like a beacon, and calling out to the people that will feel it, that will feel those frequencies, that will be on those crystalline vibrational grids. Because I know whenever I live on the ley line, I can feel it, and I always move near to one, or within, so far of being on one. And you can literally be called to these places, and that's what's happening. A lot of people all over the world, they're finding themselves at these sacred places again, opening the gateways and bridging the gap, I like to say.
So what do you do to counteract that? You close it. And you stop people from, but they can worship on the field, but the field is not the inner sanctum of Stonehenge. So that is what they're doing.
No, I said this very thing. I said, we don't necessarily have to stand directly on Stonehenge or Avebury itself. It's the actual ley line and the intent and the way that you as a person can connect with what you're doing and what your energy is doing to shift this frequency.
Especially those who've worked on themselves, like the ancients had to do, in order to connect to these higher frequencies. So those who've worked on themselves and those who have a higher frequency connect very well to the higher frequencies of the crystalline monuments. So it all comes down to the self. If I want to communicate with a divine mind, then you have to activate the divine mind, and if I want to connect with these sacred high level frequency places, then you have to work on yourself to become a compatible level with these kind of things to get maximum results from that. So we have to put the work in as well. And for those who put the work in, this ascension, this consciousness shift is not people floating up in the air into the fifth dimension. It is what we're seeing now with the great noticeable divide between those who know and those who don't. That is the ascension, the divide, the obvious divide that is becoming more and more apparent. That is the ascension. And you get people who go to Stonehenge because they love it there. They just have a feeling, but they don't know what it is. But you get the people who do know what it is, and they are utilizing the sacred energies and the sacred frequencies of these colossal monuments.